I think that a lot of times when we're young, we have these grand dreams and we're crazy and wild enough to believe that we can change the world, and we
Mm-hmm.
can. But I think we often get discouraged because we don't always learn what the road to success really looks like and feels like. I think a lot of times, we're naive when we're young, and I'm not going to blame kids for not understanding this. That's why I'm here, is to give you the tea on what is really like.
Right.
So, you got to know that that bump in the road that you're about to hit, par for the course. Okay. Doesn't mean you're bad at this. Doesn't mean this is a bad idea. It just means you got to find a way over it and keep on going. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you decide to stop, then yeah, that's the end of your journey and it's all over. But that's a choice that you make.
Welcome to BossLocks, and you are now listening to the next episode from our pilot series with today's show featuring Patricia Clahar. And today's interview is an interesting one. I mean, they're all interesting if I do say so myself, but this one makes me think of the journey to entrepreneurship, or even just a journey towards growth of any nature. I mean, you see, it's an interesting path to embark on. I mean, you have to first find something that you're interested in, figure out how to make it work for you, and believe that it will help you achieve your wildest dreams. I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds pretty simple, but in all reality, it can be pretty intimidating. Matter of fact, I'd argue that believing in yourself is the hardest part about following your dreams. I mean, not only do you have to have the confidence that you can do it, but you also have to be ready and stand up for what you believe in when people try to get you to give up or tell you that you aren't good enough to make your idea become a reality. I know it wasn't until this podcast was released that I truly started to believe in myself, and a lot of that confidence came from the lessons I've learned from my past guests, and that's why I find today's guest so interesting. You see, not only does Patricia help people embark on their entrepreneurial journey, but she caters her knowledge to lead kids and teens to start businesses of their own. And I just think it's so incredible and powerful in so many ways. And honestly, I can't wait for you to learn more about Patricia's journey and what she does for a living. So without any further ado, here is episode 7, Empathy and Leadership with Patricia Clahar. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Walter Gaynor II. I would like to welcome you to BossLocks. This is a show where we are redefining professionalism by proving that natural hair and professionalism do coexist. Now, today I have the honor and privilege of speaking with Patricia Clahar. Patricia, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's been a day, but, blessed, very blessed. So for anyone who is not familiar, Patricia is an educator who teaches and provides educational programs that support entrepreneurship amongst kids and young adults. Patricia is also a Harvard grad with an MBA from Columbia, worked at Def Jam, and really has done so many things throughout her life. And I really can't wait to hear about your journey and what you're doing now.
Looking forward to it.
Nice. So before we dive into everything, I always ask people, if you could name 3 things that most people don't really know about you.
Okay. The first thing I would say is a lot of people know that I'm an entrepreneur and that I provide entrepreneurship education for kids and teens.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people don't realize is that I have another side hustle. I teach English as a foreign language, and I work independently, so I don't work for one particular company, but I have students all over the world that I talk to on a daily basis in Taiwan, sometimes South America, Spain, a couple in China, and
wow.
It's really awesome. I just love being able to talk to people that are halfway around the world and from a totally different culture, just on a daily basis. I think it has such a profound impact on your perspective on the world and life.
Yeah, for real though. You really see things from other people's perspectives from a whole different culture. That's
Yeah.
really cool. You know, when I was in college, I was really blessed to go to China for this study abroad program. And it was interesting. There's a lot of people like from America and other countries who go over there to teach English, and you don't even need to know the other language. They just really want people who are native English speakers. But
Yeah,
you're doing that
absolutely.
on a whole new level. You're speaking to people in Taiwan, Spain, all over the world. You know, full round
Yeah.
view of the society and everything. That's really cool.
Yeah, English is really in demand, like in so many other countries. It's really
Hmm.
interesting how much people really kind of need it in order to, progress in their professions and,
Mm,
things like that. So
true. Do you speak any other languages?
I do actually. I speak Spanish, so that does help me with my
Okay.
Spanish speaking students. And the other language that I study is American Sign Language, actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that's really starting to pick back up ASL and a lot of school programs too.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love
Oh,
that.
very cool. Okay, nice. All right, so we'll have to circle back around to that. So that's one. What's something else? I mean, that really, I mean, in a way, kind of counts for like three different things. But if you have more you want to share, you know, I'm all for
Well, I did have two others in
it. All
mind.
right.
You already mentioned that I used to work at Def Jam, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, it is as fun as and exciting as it sounds. People always ask me, "Is it really that fun?" Yes, it was
Mm-hmm.
really that fun. You got to meet a lot of celebrities, go to album release parties and things like that. One
Mm-hmm.
thing that a lot of people don't realize about working at a place like that is you do get a lot of access to free things, and the thing that I really got obsessed with was getting free CDs at work. I worked for the
Oh,
head of a department, and he literally would just let me order anything I wanted for free. Like I would take orders from my friends, like, what do you want this week? And I would just order it and then give them
that
to
is
my
so
friends.
cool. Wow, that's awesome. You were the plug. You're like, I got it. What do you
Yes,
need?
I got you.
Wow, that's really cool. My stepdad worked at a FYE, which is this music and entertainment stores. Are usually in the mall. And
I
when he
remember
worked
it.
there,
Yes.
yeah, back
Hmm.
when CDs were definitely bigger.
Right.
Yeah, he would like sometimes he'd be able to get like the store demo CD, and he'd be able to take it home. We'd be able to get
Yeah.
free access, but that's like little game compared to what you had. That's really cool. That's really cool. What was going on around the time you worked there?
Around the time I worked there, it actually was really interesting because it was after this whole movement of joint ventures came
Hmm.
about, like the Rockefeller and Murder Inc. and all of those things. Like that was right after all those things got really popular, and every artist who started to get big, they didn't want to just bring new artists to their home label. They wanted their own label, and they wanted a joint venture. So it was
Mm.
pretty cool to kind of watch those people grow their businesses
Wow.
within this larger company. And the other thing that was really kind of interesting and trippy about that time was it was around the time when platforms like Napster were becoming really popular, and
Mm.
all these bigwig execs were freaking out about people stealing the music, and how are we going to maintain a business, and what is this is going to ruin our business model. I mean, it was so interesting to be there at that time because people really didn't know what things were going to look like on the other side of all of that craziness. and
Right.
um and now of course we see it as it's just our new normal, that music is digital, and you
Right.
can get it online and it's no big deal. But at that time it scared so many people.
Wow. That is interesting. You really worked there at a very like iconic time in the culture from
I
just
did.
like the change of like how internet impacts everything and also like you mentioned did you meet Jay-Z?
I wouldn't say I met him like we were buddy buddy, but I mean, his
He was
office at one
around.
point was
Hmm.
right down the hall from me. So I worked in the legal department, and so of course we had to always talk to these joint ventures about the deals and the
Hmm.
new artists and things like that. So I was definitely down in the office, and I would see him and things like that. I remember his assistant. I would always talk to her because we were the ones who kind of dealt with all the paperwork. And
Hmm.
I actually remember one moment in particular where a coworker of mine who was at the desk right next to me, she was pregnant at the time. And I
Mm.
mean, like super pregnant. She was like 8 months and 3 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And he just happened to come by and, saw her and was just like, hey, and wishing her well. And I remember him like asking if he could touch her belly. And she was like, go ahead. It was like kind of like a cool, like sweet moment, where just like two regular people just connect over something, that everyone has in common.
It's over regular life.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's a story that you'd probably have to sign an NDA about now. We'll just cancel this whole podcast.
Right.
Keep on. Wow. Okay, that's cool, man. That's really cool. All right, so that was that number 2. That was number 2.
That was. I didn't even get to the last
Wow.
one. Should I keep going?
I'm really curious to see what like can be like the one you save for last. What is number 3?
I saved this for last because it's the most random. When I was a kid, from about late elementary school to early high school, around there, I was a competitive Scottish Highland dancer.
A competitive Scottish Highland dancer.
Yes, and you look confused, so
Very.
Let me explain a little bit more. So, Scottish Highland dancing is, it's like a folk style of dancing that, obviously comes from Scottish culture. It's not, it's not like the clogging or stepping type of dancing that a lot of people think of when they think of Irish or Scottish dancing, but it's something that you do in soft shoes, but you do, you wear a traditional kilt and, traditional Scottish garb. And yes, I was like pretty much the only Black girl there at the time, but it was like super fun and I really loved it. And to this day, my mom has a whole trove of like medals and trophies that I won as a competitive Scottish Highland dancer. I was good.
You were good.
I was good.
Okay. So people knew you because you're the only Black person and because you were really killing it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. So did you like have to like travel to other Scottish Highland tournaments or dancing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the way we got into it was I had a Spanish teacher at the time who just happened to be Scottish, and she did that as a kid, and she introduced us to it. And on the weekends, once we, kind of really got into it, she would take like, 4 or 5 or 6 of us in this camper that she had. And we would like drive to Pennsylvania or to Connecticut or to, to these different states that were maybe like 4 hours away because we lived in New York at the time. And yeah, we would travel and go to all these competitions and it was just so much fun.
Wow. That's really cool. That's a whole new experience too. So you're really exposed to like multiple different cultures growing up.
Yeah, I think I have been. And I think I'm lucky to have had that experience because I really do think it kind of gives you just kind of more perspective, globally speaking, and our world is so interconnected now and is such a global world and a global economy that, I think it actually is helpful and beneficial to have had that experience.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I think I know my grandmother always speaks about making sure you always have a circle with like a really diverse circle because you grow up and learn more about just this one perspective that just comes from your direct environment, and then you get to pull in others as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's a name for that. I forget what it's called, but something related to like echo. It's almost like being in an echo chamber because it's like everyone around you has the same experience and the same opinions as you, and it's just you just keep hearing the same things over and over again. But it's not ideal. I agree.
Gotcha. Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. So you basically dropped some 3 very incredible, unique things I never would have known. So thank you very much for sharing
No
that
problem.
with us. All right. Now, I know before you were speaking a little bit about your childhood before as well, about your parents. And you talk about kind of what they did for a living when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my parents are originally from Jamaica. And anybody who I think is, relatively familiar with Jamaican culture knows that it's very much a hustle-oriented culture, and entrepreneurship is big in Jamaican culture. So, when they came here, of course they, had traditional jobs initially, but it didn't take them that long to decide that they were going to start a business. And the first business that they started was a school. And they started that, I would say it was about 30 years ago that they started that. And for my entire childhood from 10 all the way till just a few years ago, that was like their main hustle, was this school out on Long Island. But then my mom, who's an accountant, she's a CPA, so she has an accounting firm, and she always had her office at home. And, down in the basement, she was always, super busy at tax time. And so, even when we were away from the school at home, it was still mom's business was right there. So I feel like entrepreneurship has just been coming at me from every angle from a very young age. Is really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. You really grow up. It's almost like entrepreneurship just becomes a normal thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that I viewed as, kind of weird or like an oddball thing to do, because it's what both my parents did.
Right. For a long time, 30 years. That's I want to shout out to them. That's that is impressive. Doing anything for 30 years, but especially running a school. Yeah. Do you know what age, what ages did they kind of cater to?
Yeah, I absolutely know, because it was definitely my first job, right? I was there
Right.
all the time. So initially when they started, it was about 2.5 years old to, I think when they first started, they went to about first grade, but over time they extended it to all the way to 5th grade. So it went from like nursery to 5th grade by the time they were done growing that range of it. And yeah, it was interesting to watch them just keep building and building. Like you said, for 30 years, that takes serious perseverance. I mean, that's a lesson that a lot of people could use.
Yeah, very much so. And I know, like, growing up with that, that's definitely like amazing, but also has challenges. I know my mom had a school when I was growing up, Montessori school. I think she had it for about 15 years, and I definitely attended that, but was also there after school's closed, watching her continue to do all the background work to make sure the school keeps running and everything. That's
right, exactly.
Definitely not an easy field. Very
Agreed.
Cool. Got you. So by the time you're growing up, teaching that was almost like destined for you to do. It's like the family business, being an entrepreneur and a teacher. That's how you're called.
Yeah, it really was. And it's funny, like, I think as much as they were such an integral part of my upbringing, as I, first kind of, got into adulthood and was finding my footing, I really fought both of those things for whatever reason. I don't know. I think, sometimes the norms that you pick up, when you're in college and from your social circle, and when you start to realize, oh, not everyone's parents are entrepreneurs, really, things like that. So, I really definitely kind of fought it at first, but at this point in my life, I have come to terms with it. It's my calling, it's my mission, and I'm not going to fight it anymore because it's not worth it.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So, actually, speaking of college, going to Harvard, that's a very big thing. So, congratulations for one getting accepted, making it through, and graduating. It's pretty awesome. And also going off to graduate school as well. Impressive. I'm curious to what your experience was at going to Harvard at that time. I know last week I spoke with Christina Joy, and she graduated from Howard. And it was interesting hearing her experience at HBCU. So I'm wondering, in your experience, what was it like going to Harvard?
There were definitely a lot of interesting aspects about going to Harvard. I think the one thing that I usually mention first is that it wasn't as, I would say, intellectually fulfilling as I expected a place like Harvard to be. That was actually kind of disappointing for me. I was always the kind of person who I love learning and I love teaching, which is why I am where I am today.
Right.
And the one thing that I really started to realize after I had been at Harvard for a little while is that a lot of the people there are not really driven by that, that burning desire to learn and to understand things. The thing that I noticed quickly is that cheating was kind of normal. And like, you know, things like that, that I just couldn't imagine doing myself. And I would never go that route. Even if it meant I had to take an F, I would take the F. But a lot of people, I think, were, for whatever reason, their goal was to get the grade, or, you know, to just to pass the course, regardless of whether they actually learned the stuff that was actually presented. It was just about the ends. They weren't really concerned with the means very much. And so I always found that, I always found that a little bit disappointing. At the same time, I have to say the social circle that I was able to develop at Harvard was really awesome. I have friends to this day that I talk to from that time in my life. And, you know, of course, now being in quarantine, you know, I'm reaching out to the ones that I haven't talked to in a little while, like, hey, how are you doing? It's been a while. How's quarantine going? And like, it's like, you know, we talk and it's like, you know, it's like we saw each other yesterday. We just kind of pick up from wherever we left off. And that I absolutely loved about my experience at Harvard.
Interesting. Do you think, I know like the past couple of years, there was a lot of scandals just around Ivy League schools and parents really, you know, doing whatever they could to get their kids in. It's understandable to a degree, but at the same time, bribery is kind of off. Would you say like most of the students that you encountered who weren't really there to learn, do you think they, I guess maybe cared they were even at Harvard in particular, or was just going to Harvard for the social status?
You know, I do think they cared, most of them. There might have been a few who maybe didn't really understand the value and the privilege that they had, because, you know, there are some people who maybe for generations their family went there, and maybe that you know, that understanding kind of gets watered down. But for most people, I think they do understand that that is an amazing place to end up. I think that for a lot of the people that maybe got into some of the things that I was mentioning earlier, they're probably just habits that they picked up from earlier in their lives. I mean, a lot of these kids came from really prestigious high schools that were super demanding. And sometimes just to survive in those environments, you start to pick up those habits about, let me just get the grade that I need so that I can get to the next phase. But then you still have that habit of just focusing on the result and not the process. And, you know, in the long term, I don't really think that serves us. So
True. You do bring up a good point. I think sometimes we kind of forget that school is very demanding. I know I played sports in college, and just having to keep up with the intensity of playing at college level sport and also keeping up with your school at the same time is it's like having two different jobs, really. So I definitely can't understand that predicament people could be in.
Yeah, it's tough. What sport did you play?
Soccer.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I played that, started in like second grade and kind of went all the way through. It was really cool because when we play soccer, you meet people from literally all over the world. So
yes,
kind of like you mentioned before, you know, I have friends like I have a friend out in Australia who's kind of leading the soccer program, and just checking in with him to see like what's going on right now from his perspective, and it's all over the world. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So going to Harvard and graduating, you had mentioned before that it actually was kind of a struggle afterwards. I think usually like we all think like, oh, graduating from Harvard, you have like a million people calling you. You don't have to do anything. You don't ever apply. You're just like, oh, another missed call from Jeff Bezos or something.
Right. From the Fortune 500, right?
Right. Yeah. And did you start your lock journey while you're in college?
No, I didn't. My natural hair journey started in college. I actually didn't end up taking the leap into locks until shortly after grad school. So probably, I'd say maybe 5 to 7 years after I was done with college.
Gotcha. So what was this like, I guess what led you to even just start with natural hair in general? What was that transition like for you?
Well, around that time, so this was like mid to late 90s. And that was kind of around the time where braids, extensions started to become really popular.
Right.
And, it was around the time of like poetic justice, and, she
Oh,
had
gotcha.
those
Yeah.
braids going on. So, it was really starting to catch on. And the other thing is, just being in college, and like you said, sometimes being really busy, overwhelmed, and, trying to get everything done.
Yeah.
The maintenance of braids is like super appealing because it's very low maintenance on a day-to-day basis. So I started getting braids kind of around sophomore, junior year, just to simplify my life and, for the aesthetic. And then probably about 6 months down the line or something, I had a perm when I started getting the braids. And then I had a really bad, and I mean horrendous, perm experience.
Ooh.
Was so bad. And I was like, I am never, ever perming my hair again. And that was it. I washed my hands of all the lye, no lye, whatever, chemical relaxers. And I was like, never again. And
Oh,
I
wow.
just, yeah.
Oh. So yeah, it's
So it
like
was,
trauma with your transition.
yes, it was a trauma related transition. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
So, so I kept the braids for a while longer just so that I could start to grow out a little more natural hair. And I was like, I'm going to do the big chop as soon as I feel like I have, enough that I can do it and not be like totally skin bald on my head.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I ended up going natural. It was just a really bad experience.
Oh man. Okay, so how was it when you went through that transition, you started to grow the natural hair, you were still in college, like what was the what was like the feedback and the energy around it?
Well, actually, the great thing is that the other thing that I would say probably has a little bit to do with the timing, like mid to late 90s, but also just people being in college and kind of, experimenting and, finding, who they want to be as a person. A lot of women were experimenting with natural hair at the time.
I see.
So, anytime, somebody else was like thinking about it, talking about it, we have our little powwows in the lunchroom or whatever. And like, there was a lot of support and encouragement, like, yeah, girl, try it. You'll look great. We can figure out whatever style will look good on you, because that's all you really got to do. You have to get used to a new you, and you got to find what works for you. So I thought it was a great time and a place to really do that. And I ended up loving it. I started out with my teeny weeny afro, and, I was all about, I like to change things up. And with a teeny weeny afro, there's not a lot you can change up style wise, but you can change the color. You can change the color. And that's what I did on a regular basis for most of college.
Oh,
and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
All right, cool. And did you have the afro when you graduated and were starting to like apply for jobs?
I did, yeah. So I had the afro, and I'm trying to think. It was still a teeny weeny afro when I graduated. And the first job that I had afterwards was at a law firm, and a pretty, like, I guess you could say conservative one. Paul Weiss, I don't know if people in New York may have heard of it, but it's like a big corporate law firm. And yes, my hair was colored, but they were cool with it. It was not a big deal. So I didn't really find it to be a hindrance for my path at the time. I do think that some other women kind of felt nervous about interviewing because they were maybe kind of going for the more business consulting route or investment banking route. And, that can be super conservative. So, and then particularly the types of companies that they're striving for, they want to work for the biggest and the best and work with the brightest. There's nothing wrong with aiming for that, but sometimes there are fears about how the people that made decisions there might view them because of their natural hair. Was a big concern, and for some women, unfortunately, I feel like they were forced to make decisions that they probably didn't really want to, and they probably wouldn't have if they felt a little bit freer to just be themselves in those environments. But, such is life.
Right. That's interesting though. So in your field, I guess, what was that first job?
So I first worked as a corporate paralegal at Paul Weiss. Yeah.
Okay. Is that a type of role where you're more behind the scenes and someone who's like, I guess, a consultant going after like the Time Warners?
Yeah, exactly. I was not, it's not really a client facing role.
Gotcha.
It was something where it's more of like support to the corporate lawyers, right? Like I wasn't a lawyer. I was fresh out of college. So, I didn't have any legal advice to give anyone. But, we were there to kind of support whatever they were working on. Like I remember one really big project I worked on was when, what was that team? Some football team was being sold.
Oh, wow.
Was it the Redskins? Maybe is that a football team? I don't even
That
know.
is
It is
in DC.
okay. It might have been that one, but I remember when all these other lawyers from potential buyers for the team came in, and I was there, because I helped to do all the due diligence, because that was really kind of what we really did to support the lawyers. So it wasn't like they were trying to hide us from the clients, but we weren't really the spokespeople for the company.
Gotcha. So I guess oftentimes the fear comes in those employment decisions when you're in a client-facing role and they're afraid of like the perception of someone with natural hair.
Right. The perception of someone with natural hair or locks actually representing them as a company or a brand,
Gotcha. Okay, that's an interesting perspective, because this podcast and really all started from my journey when I was getting ready to graduate, and I was kind of nervous about entering the field with Locs.
Right.
And I knew it was possible, but I was always curious about how exactly people are navigating the corporate landscape. And of course, things have changed a bit now, but not really that much. I mean, obviously, if we have to try to push laws into place to protect people, then obviously there's still an issue.
Yeah, it's really shocking to me that, I'm talking about 20 years ago. And, I really would have hoped that things could have changed a little bit more than they have. But
Right.
I mean, we're still fighting to, get things like the Crown Act passed, because there's still a lot of discrimination against, certain types of hairstyles and, things like that. So it's unfortunate.
Yes, it is. And I think that's why just hearing like your story is kind of so important, because you're someone who has been not only like working in schools, but also just in high level places with Locs. And regardless if you know it or not, just like your work ethic really shows and paints a subconscious picture that, Locs are not actually that unprofessional. And and that actually leads me to a question, kind of in your words, how would you describe professionalism, or like, what does that mean to you?
So I think there are definitely some different components to that, but I think one thing that I think is really crucial is just your sense of relationship management and like emotional intelligence, or I think some people call it EQ, or something like that. But I just think that it's really important as a professional, and to present yourself as a professional, that you're able to see things from other people's perspectives. Even if you don't agree, even if you think they're dead wrong, I think it's still really important to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes, to empathize with them and understand what their needs are, and to also have the mental fortitude to be able to take in new information and reevaluate your own beliefs and your own thoughts on a regular basis. Because I think a lot of people think of mental fortitude as always standing your ground and always trying to convince other people that you're the one that's right. But I actually think it's the total opposite. I think people that are really smart enough to rethink things that were core beliefs to them, but now with some new information or experiences that they've been presented with, they can say, oh, you know what? I could have been wrong about that. And I accept that. I think that really takes a higher level of, intelligence and professionalism and strength to be able to do that. I think one thing I thought about when I was thinking about this question is that I think in our culture, particularly American culture, we learn pretty well how to run our mouths and say what we feel and what we believe is right. But we don't always learn as well how to shut up and listen to other people, how to accept that we are not always right. You know?
Right.
Like, and I think those things are really important, to be introspective and to always be rethinking, because you could always be wrong. Like, that is always a distinct possibility. And if
That's
you
very
ignore that,
true.
you know, that's, I really think a lot of times that's what separates average from superior, whether it's a professional, whether it's a leader, whether it's an employee, a manager. Like, I think that is such an important part of it.
That's really powerful. And I agree with you 100%. I know it's really like oftentimes like it's a 50% chance that you are right. Like you really could be right with everything you have, all the knowledge you have, but there could be a whole other piece of it that really just shuts down your kind of main fact for saying that you were right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just maybe could be based on the types of experiences that you've had. You know, you've had all these experiences, but wait, there's those experiences over there that you're just now realizing exist, and now you have to kind of just rethink, you know, your whole perspective, because being able to take in that new information and synthesize and, you know, build a new picture of what's real or what's true is, I think, important just to be able to grow as a person.
Okay, so let me ask you, because I guess really to be truly effective, you'd have to have a balance of being able to sit back and know that you may be wrong and let someone else speak, and also that other side where it is like, no, definitely fight for kind of what you believe in. So what would you say is like, how do you learn to find that balance, or how do you know when is your time to speak up and stand up for your idea?
So that's a good question. I would say that I don't think there's anything wrong with speaking up about your opinions or your stance on something. I think that my preference is always to ask questions before I get to that point, because I mean, I always feel like I learn so much more by asking questions. I learn so much more by taking in information than by putting out information. So, you know, when there are times when you have to express yourself, and there may be some core beliefs that you firmly believe and you're not going to change your mind on. And those are choices that you have to make. But I just think that if you're smart about always reevaluating, then you can start to make those decisions more easily. If you reevaluate and you say to yourself, no, even with this new information, I'm still sticking with this, then that's fine, and stick with it and say that. That's okay. But I think the part that a lot of people sometimes let skate is that reevaluation. They just keep on going because we're creatures of habit, right? You know, like that's what people do. They like habit, they like change, they like staying on the same course because it's comfortable. But you have to make yourself uncomfortable. You have to.
Oh, I like that. You have to make yourself uncomfortable. That's really cool. Okay, cool. So have you, like I said, kind of stick in that topic of when it's time to speak up or sit back. Have you had any issues throughout your journey with any like hair discrimination or like race-based discrimination in the workplace?
That's an interesting question. Let me think for a minute. I have to say, I don't think I've really experienced hair discrimination in the workplace, but I think a lot of that has to do with the profession. For, you know, for example, like, you know, the people that I talked about who after college, they wanted to work for a Fortune 500 company or an investment bank or something like that. That was never my path. I never had any desire to work in a space that, I'll use conservative for lack of a better term. I never had any desire to work in a space that was that conservative. And it's not because I was afraid of discrimination. It just wasn't for me. I just knew that wasn't a place that I wanted to be. I wanted to work someplace that was a little bit different. You know, I've always kind of I've always kind of been like, I've always kind of followed like, the path, what do you call it? The path less traveled or whatever.
Oh,
Like
really?
that's always kind of been my MO in life. I never picked the traditional path. It's just not my style. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think the places that I end up are often places that are a little more open and a little more free. And so I haven't had any experiences like that in particular that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I've had experiences outside the workplace, of course,
Right. That's a
because
whole other
you
story.
can't control. Yeah, you can't control your environment everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there's that.
Oh, that's cool. That actually reminds me of I think last year speaking with Dr. Abasi Bomani, who was kind of sharing that really if you're in an environment where people do have an issue with your hair or the way you present yourself, that might not be an environment that's best for you anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
That was pretty cool. And also, I guess it also speaks to your entrepreneurship mindset as well, and helping kids get into entrepreneurship. So I guess in your words, what exactly do you do?
So I am an education enrichment specialist, and my focus is providing entrepreneurship education for kids and teens. So I provide online and in-person solutions to families, schools, youth organizations who want to support youth entrepreneurship.
Very cool. So do you kind of work with just one school, or is it anyone and everyone who's like, oh, I want to sign up for this? Like, who exists
Yeah,
do you usually work with?
I
Oh,
mean,
just there.
anyone and everyone. I mean, right now I'm doing a lot of work with families because all the schools are closed at the moment. It's at least all the schools
Right.
around me. But one thing that I'm starting to do is to reach out to the schools who are, they're just starting to figure out this distance learning thing. I think a lot of schools are starting to realize that this is going to last a little bit longer than they were initially hoping. So I am starting to talk to schools about how I might be able to help in terms of, supporting some project-based learning initiatives that they're starting to bring into education because, with this type of setup that they have now, it is actually kind of a nice approach to take, project-based learning. So like there's a school in New York that I initially had an in-person workshop planned for, and that's not going to happen at the moment, but they are starting to talk about what they are going to do between now and June. And she sent me a message. She's like, I didn't forget about you. I think we can still do something online, but we got to figure it out. So let's talk. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But working with the kids is just really easy because as long as they have an internet connection at home, their parents can sign them up for a meeting, and I can mentor them and coach them through this process just one-on-one.
That's really cool and very important as well. I'm glad that the school is still excited and interested about making that happen.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and there's so many opportunities out there. Like we kind of posted this guy named Moxie who bought an ATM for his kids and got them into just owning an ATM business. And they have a couple of different locations down in Florida. And I just think like stories like that is just so important because it shows like one, there are so many ways to kind of start off your entrepreneurship journey, and it could be something you don't necessarily have to invent the next like Facebook. You could own an ATM or something like that.
Exactly.
What are some of the lessons that you're teaching the kids in your program?
Well, because I do a lot of one-on-one, what I do is very customized. So, it really depends on the kid that's sitting in front of me and, whatever, situation they're tackling at the moment. But there are kind of some underlying principles that I'm always referring to and bringing up when I work with kids, because I just think they're really important, not only for entrepreneurship, but they're just like really important life skills. One of them is problem seeking and solving. And,
Gotcha.
as an entrepreneur, like that's your job. Find a problem, create a good solution, figure out how to make it a value proposition, and then go find the people, who have this problem. And, that's how you can, create value for a community. You know, particularly I like seeking / solving, because I think sometimes we get really good at problem like seeking, but not solving. We're like, hey, there's a problem here. Is somebody going to solve this? Like, no, you solve it. You found it. Like, why can't you solve it?
Right.
So, you know, I really love to always talk about that. And empathy, I already talked about. I just think that's really important to really build good, strong, genuine relationships with people. You can't do that without empathy. And, you know, I think it's so applicable also when I talk to kids about marketing and, you know, putting themselves in their customer's shoes. And what is your customer really concerned about? What are they struggling with? Or, you know, when you're trying to make a sale, what is that person on the other side of the table? What is it that they really need? Who are they looking for this for? How do you make sure you match them with the right product, the perfect product for them? You know, like that's how you kind of get those things to fall into place. Is you really got to be able to see things from the other person's perspective so that you can say, hey, I know your problem. I understand where you're coming from. This is the solution for you, and let me explain to you why. When you can speak their language, that helps you make that connection with your customer or potential customers. Another one is just money management. And, you know, I think that one kind of speaks for itself. You know, you can make all the money in the world. If you don't know how to manage it and hold on to it, you're going to be broke tomorrow. So you got to learn that skill. And the last thing I talk about a lot is the success mindset. And I think that a lot of times when we're young, you know, we have these grand dreams and we're crazy and wild enough to believe that we can change the world, and we can. But I think we often get discouraged because we don't always learn what the road to success really looks like and feels like. You know, I think a lot of times, you know, we're naive when we're young, you know, and I'm not going to blame kids for not understanding this. You know, that's why I'm here, is to, like, you know, give you the tea on like what it's really like. Right. So, you know, you got to know that like that bump in the road that you're about to hit, par for the course. Okay. Doesn't mean you're bad at this. Doesn't mean this is a bad idea. It just means you got to find a way over it and keep on going. Now, if you decide to stop, then yeah, that's the end of your journey and it's all over. But that's a choice that you make, you know, things like that, like how to help them navigate to success and not let those little pitfalls derail them or discourage them, because, dude, that is life, you know, and that is entrepreneurship.
Yes, it is. I already see the excitement in your eyes just as you're talking about this. I already know. Like, I can only imagine what I might like hop in on one of your sessions one day. Just that's really cool. It really inspired me. And how old are the kids that are usually in your program?
So I work with kids, anyone 18 or younger. I have had families with a kid as young as 6 or 7. Oh, wow. And they're like, I'm all about this lip gloss that I learned how to make. Help me sell it, you know? Or like, grandma taught me how to make these bomb brownies. I can make money off this, but I need a little help, you know? Right. So I do not set a minimum age, right? Wow. The only thing that I need families to understand is that if you have a young entrepreneur that really is on the young side, they're going to need support. Right? They're going to need help from the family. They obviously can't drive themselves to make deliveries or to put things in the mail. You know, they're going to need help managing some of these things. But if the family is on board with really supporting this and giving them as much help as they need until they develop the skills to kind of do more on their own, I'll support the whole team, whoever that is.
Wow. That's really cool. So as long as they can speak and understand,
exactly.
they could probably join. That's really cool. 5 or 6. You know, actually, my sibling who is born an entrepreneur, like my mom had the school for a long time. My grandmother had a fashion company in New York way back in the day. And my sibling has had that entrepreneurial spirit. Like, they used to sew pillows and sell them when they were 6 years old. And then they actually had they got a retail license and started selling candy in our neighborhood during the summers, and like made a profit. So yeah, I really think like there are so many ways to get it. It doesn't matter how old you are. And it's really cool. You really have that wide range from like, it could be 5, it could be 18.
Exactly.
Really cool.
I just think it's really important for a lot of kids, you know, they don't even really kind of see much of this until they get to college or, you know, later. And I just think that they need it at so much of a younger age, because I think the kind of mindset that it takes to really do something like this, it's actually, I think, more optimal at a younger age, unless you've really kind of had some training or experience in, you know, how to approach it. Because you can't tell an 8-year-old that they're not, you know, that they're not going to sell those brownies. You can't tell them that they're not going to do it. You know, they're crazy enough to believe that, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make $1 million doing it. Yeah. So, but they just need a little bit of help to, you know, get all those pieces in place that they need to really have a successful and profitable business.
Wow. And that is cool with like the different things you're teaching them to solve problems, enter situations with empathy, money, managing their money, that success mindset. Those are like core values that once they master that, they could really go into any business and kind of help it grow. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
I listen to Gary Vee a lot, and he really kind of breaks down like that success mindset part, like how long it really takes. Like, and she said, I believe like it took Ellen like 10 years from when they like started in the business till now, 10 years to really become Ellen. And that's Ellen. She had already that other talent as well. So just in general, like there's no overnight success really. It's usually the grind, the hustle. Times like now when we're all kind of sitting indoors, really putting that to work.
Right. 100%. Like it drives me crazy when, you know, people use that phrase overnight success, because man, that is such a unicorn situation. Really, all the people that you think were overnight successes, they were grinding for 5 years, 10 years, and you just never heard of them. You know, but they were putting in the work, and that's why all of a sudden you discovered them and you're like, oh, overnight they're famous. No, no, you just didn't know who they were when they were grinding.
Yeah, that's probably I'm sure most people were like, oh yeah, I did this in no time. They're lying.
Yeah, anybody who's trying to sell you that, probably not really true.
Right, man. Okay, so during this time actually right now where a lot of people are really sitting at home, and as for some people, like they don't necessarily have the choice, actually do have to still go out and work. But for those kind of families you're speaking to that kind of have time, or they're trying to figure out something to do with their kids, what are some things you're recommending to them to, one, stay engaged with their kids, but also seek out opportunities for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so now is a really interesting time, because I definitely come across a lot of kids who, if they started businesses already, and believe it or not, that a lot of the kids that I come across, they've already started something, which I think is really cool. Yeah. But a lot of them are have done a lot in terms of like the pop-up markets and, you know, live events and things like that. So the fact that that is like completely gone and is not a revenue stream for them, a lot of them, I'm now talking to them, one, about just other ways to build up their business. Like, are there some social media marketing skills that you need to be learning? Do you need to be building a website? Because right now, all you have is social media, and that's never a good way to build a long-term business. Like, you need your own online property if you're really going to build a business.
Sure.
You know, things like, you know, doing promotion and marketing for your business from your house, like podcast interviews and, you know, things like that. I actually know several podcasts that are specifically dedicated to youth entrepreneurship, and they want to interview kid entrepreneurs, but a lot of kids don't know to pursue those opportunities to talk about their business and their brand and their message. So, you know, really talking to them about how they can use this time to increase their brand awareness, how to improve their online presence. And then also for the ones who can sell online, because some things can be sold online, talking to them about how to actually make that online sales process. Because if they're kind of used to the in-person sales and the pop-up markets, that's a new thing for a lot of them. And sometimes their families need help supporting that because they don't really have experience in that either.
Wow. Okay, so Right, I want to take a quick break just so you could tell everyone where they could find out more about your program, because this is a must. I know just people like in my age group and older who probably need your advice as well. But anyone with kids right now, like where can they go to find out more about your program?
Sure. I have a website, and the website is teachentrepreneurshiporkids.com. On the website, the resource you should definitely look for is my free playbook for kids in business. It's got some really helpful tips for parents or families who are supporting these kids, and it's also got some really helpful tips for kids, and also some stories about my entrepreneurial adventures as a kid and as an adult, and things that I learned. So I think that's a really helpful resource. I also offer 2 free coaching calls to anybody who wants to talk about potential business ideas or improving the business that they've already started. So all of those things are available on the website. I am on social media. Instagram is definitely the hot spot. My Instagram handle is Hands-On Entrepreneurship for Kids, and it is the number 4 in that one, only because I literally ran out of characters. I couldn't spell FOR. So, I just went for the number. Right. And then I'm also on Facebook too, Hands-On Entrepreneurship for Kids, if that's your preferred platform.
Gotcha. So if you have an internet connection, there's no excuse. You get like 2 free hours, got a free PDF. Wow. Yes. What was one of the entrepreneurial pursuits you had as a kid?
Well, the one I like to talk about the most is one that I got into when I was in middle school with a good friend of mine named Izzy. And we still chat on Facebook to this day, even though she doesn't live in my area anymore. But when she comes to town, we still see each other. And we were hanging out one day. We couldn't go out for recess because it was like raining or something like that. And we saw some of the boys, because, it was back when, the boys have sat at the boys' table and the girls sat at the girls' table. And the boys were, so the boys were playing football with this paper football. And it came flying our way, and Izzy grabbed it, and she was just kind of looking at it because it was kind of interesting how it was folded, kind of like origami style, but it's just a triangle. And she took it, stuck it on her finger, and she was like, "Oh, look, it's a hat for my finger. It's a finger hat." And so we thought that was hilarious. The boys didn't think it was funny at all. They just wanted to play football.
Like, what you do to my football?
Right, exactly. She's like, you're ruining our game. Come on.
Right.
So, but Izzy was like, "No, they're finger hats. Isn't that cool?" And I was like, "Yeah, I actually kind of like that." So we harassed this kid Jason to teach us how to make these footballs, which we turned into finger hats, and we started like decorating them. Oh, and cool. So we would like decorate them. We were wearing them in class, and probably getting in a little bit of trouble, but don't tell anybody. And
we're keeping this podcast hidden. No one's
keep it on the low. But like some of our friends were like, "Oh, can you make one but put cats on it? Or can you make one but put these flowers on it?" And I was like, "Girl, Izzy, we can sell these." And so we had a finger hat business for a very short stint, but it was still fun. It was short because we got busted by the administration. We were told that we could not take money from our classmates, and man, it really burned me up because I was like, dude, we are creating value, man. Do you understand what's going on here? But they were not having it. They shut us down. Wow. And so that was like just one of these moments that I always remember from my childhood about wanting to be an entrepreneur and hitting an obstacle, and I let it be the end of the road for me. I didn't fight. I didn't fight it because I was always the kind of student, like, I was the good girl. I always did my homework, never got in trouble, and being called to the principal's office, I was like, "Oh shoot, what's going on?" Like I was scared, and they told us to stop, and I was like, "Okay, I guess that's it." But in hindsight, I wish I had just known a little bit more about the success mindset. I would found a way around it, or over it, or through it, or something.
Hey, well, that had to happen for you to get to where you are today, teaching other kids how to push through it, keep that creativity flowing. Very cool.
So I want to take a quick moment just to say thank you to everyone who's joined me on this journey. From the support on social media, the private messages I get in my inbox, and also the orders coming in from the BossLocks shop. I just want to say I truly, truly appreciate all of this support. Also, another quick shout out is to ODE Omar, who actually created this song that's playing right now. He's someone I went to school with back in the day, Bluefield College, and it's always great when you can support and collaborate with people that you kind of came up with. And also want to let you all know that I'm working on something new. I mean, I'm always working on something to help grow the podcast and elevate Black voices, but I'm working on something that I hope will expand this podcast and help it grow into new realms and new dimensions. It's something that I hope I'll be able to announce by the end of July. But if you would like a sneak peek, for everyone that's signed up for my mailing list, it should come to your inbox in a week or two. And it's not too late. If you haven't signed up, all you do is go to our website, which is www.bosslocks.org. And there's a form. You just have to scroll for 1 second. You'll see it to sign up, and it's completely free. Once again, that's www.bosslocks.org, which is BOSSLOCKS.org. You can sign up today. And also, you should just check out the website because I put in some time into it. It's not like the most glamorous thing you'll ever see, but I'm proud of it, and love for y'all to check it out. So, anyways, I'm gonna let you get back to hearing more about Patricia and her journey. And thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, nice. So now I want to kind of get into your lock journey in particular. So to kind of start off, what message would you give to others about natural hair?
Embrace it.
Embrace it?
Embrace it, man. Yeah, there's nothing to fear. I think that, kind of like we talked about earlier, I think, some people have this notion that it's not for me, it won't look good on me. There's no way that the hair that you were born with doesn't look good on you. I've never met that person. You know what I mean? Like, do you have to maybe do a little research, do a little work, do a little experimenting? Yeah, sure. I mean, I was all about those natural hair magazines when I first went natural. And then, also when I was looking at locks and after I got them, because you got to find what works for you. But don't be afraid that you're gonna look crazy or that it's not for you. There is some style, some way to rock your natural hair. Just embrace it. Go for it.
Nice. And how long have you had locks?
It's been about 15 years.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's been that long.
Did you keep going all the way through it? Do you take little breaks, like try out different hairstyles?
I've had these locks all the way through. I have trimmed them from time to time, but I've never gotten rid of them and started again. I know people who have done that. Like I have a cousin who he does that I don't know, every so often. But I've just kept it going 15 years straight.
Nice. And I know before you had a mini fro and you would dye it sometimes, but did you try any other types of hairstyles before you went into locks?
Yeah, I did. So in between locks and the teeny weeny afro, I had a larger, more voluminous afro.
Oh,
I was very proud of it. Yes.
Nice.
And I still played around with the color, but when I had a little more length, I started to discover other styles like twist outs and braid outs and things like that. So, kind of getting the little wavy look and, all those different things. I really had a lot of fun with it. Like I said, I had that magazine by my side and I was always trying something new. And, I think the only reason why I didn't keep that in the long term is because the length for me, it was a lot of maintenance. I'm a super low maintenance kind of girl, and that was just more than I was willing to dedicate to my hair. So
I understand that. Yeah, I know. I remember one of the things that got me excited about locks was just not having to do anything with it every single day. Like
Right.
there's that one day we have to sit there and really like spend hours on it. But other than that, just wake up and be ready to go.
Exactly. Get up and go.
Yeah. Was that kind of what inspired you to start growing Locs, or was there something else that motivated you?
No, it was actually that. I mean, I actually contemplated Locs for years,
Oh,
I would
really?
say. Yeah, a long time. Because, like I said, I always had these magazines, and, there's always the variety of styles, and the Locs would, always catch my attention. And I was like, man, I wonder if I could pull it off. Could I? Maybe, maybe not. But the thing that really frightened me and held me back was there's this feeling of permanence about getting Locs, right? Like everybody always tells you, well, if you get Locs and then you decide you don't want them, you got to cut all your hair off again, start from scratch. And that can be a little bit intimidating. I mean, I did chop it all off once, but I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to go that route again. And so it kind of helped me back a little bit, but I was always looking, I was always thinking about it. I was always on the fence. And I actually think what really kind of pushed me over finally was when I discovered Sister Locs, because that's what I ended up getting. And I think the reason why I kind of just went over the edge when I kind of discovered Sister Locs was, one, I know this is a podcast, people can't see me, but like I'm a tiny lady, like I'm very slight framed. And, there's some Locs that I think can be a little bit bigger and thicker. And, I wanted something that, was kind of fitting for the rest of me, And the other thing is that the impression that I got was that you kind of had more styling options with Sister Locs. And I don't even know if that's actually true, but at the time I was convinced that it was true. And that kind of helped to push me over the edge also.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I remember I already had Locs where I started learning about Sister Locs, and at one point I actually had someone who did Sister Locs on me to a degree because I was playing sports, and anytime I got a retwist, like, I had soccer practice the next day, and like it would just kind of come undone, and the Sister Locs kind of helped keep it locked in regardless of what happened. But yeah, I do know I've seen a lot of people who can do different types of styles, but and over the time I've learned like just everyone's hair in general could do different things. So it's really is interesting. But yeah, Sister Locs is a really cool way to especially get into Locs too, because then it's kind of like you still have like loose hair, you could do a little bit of different things with it.
Yeah, although the funny part is, like, I don't really do much with it. I pretty much just get up and go every day. So I don't know if that was like, I probably didn't take advantage of that as much as I thought I would. But it pushed me over the edge. So, there's
Gotcha.
that.
Okay, so is your go-to hairstyle really just kind of just letting it fall down?
Yeah, this is it.
Nice. Also, like, connects with your culture
and
as
also,
well?
back to home at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Nice. So, would you say, are there any misconceptions about one, I guess just like the cultural, any misconception about the Jamaican culture that you think is important to kind of dispel?
Misconceptions about the Jamaican culture. That's a good one. I think that, well, first I'll say this. I think a lot of people, when they think about Jamaican culture, obviously like one of the iconic Jamaicans is Bob Marley, right? These days you could also maybe, if there were Usain Bolt in there, but like, especially when I was younger, it was just Bob Marley and that's it. So I do think that people often make an immediate connection with reggae and Jamaican culture, which I think is true. But with Rastafarian culture and all the things associated, like including marijuana and things like that, I do think it's important for people to really understand that yes, Rastafarian culture is a common thing in Jamaica. That doesn't mean everyone from Jamaica is a Rasta. It also is important to remember. Not everyone who has locks is a Rasta.
Mm-hmm.
I think people make that assumption about me. Like they see the locks and they think, oh, she's a Rasta, and oh, she's into this and into that. Like, I'm not. This, while it was a lifestyle choice and I think partially a cultural choice, it wasn't the religious choice like Rastas make. And that's definitely a different aspect of locks. So I think sometimes they all kind of get, intermingled when they shouldn't always be, So I would say that's probably the one misconception that a lot of people have.
Gotcha. I appreciate you answering that. I know that's like a big question I just kind of sprung on you at the end, but thank you for that. And that's very important to share as well. And I guess really I have just one more question for you. Mm-hmm. It's a big one as well. What is the first thing that you're going to do once it's safe to go back out into society again and everything's open back up?
Oh, okay. It's funny. I've been asking other people this question, but I actually haven't thought about it for myself. So, all right, let's see. The first thing, the first thing I really want to do is super simple, but I just want to go out to a restaurant and sit there and eat my meal there.
Yes.
I can't wait to do that again.
Mm-hmm. Any restaurant in particular?
Yes, actually. So there's a favorite restaurant that my husband and I have. It's right here in the neighborhood. It's a local spot. Like, we go there all the time. Like, every server in there knows us. The host knows us. The bartenders, they know us by name. When this whole thing started, we were like, we got to order from there to make sure that it's still open when this is all over. But unfortunately, they're not open right now. They decided to just, shut their doors for now. And, it really hurts because, like, those people there, they're our peeps, and right now they're out of work. They're not getting an income or anything like that. And it feels horrible to know that they're dealing with that. And day one, we're going back there to support. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a restaurant in our neighborhood called Brockett Pub, and at first they were open to kind of do to-go orders, because once a week we went there, but then one of their staff members had a family who actually caught coronavirus, and so they decided to kind of close down. And it's so interesting. I think a lot of times we don't necessarily know anybody who has coronavirus. We just think like, is it real? But then you hear like, oh, this person, oh, and then that person there. And it's really just like the circle gets smaller from the people who don't have it to do. And
absolutely, it is really real. If anyone has any doubts, my mom had it, my dad had it, my sister had it, and I think my sister's boyfriend has it right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is really real. I mean, they're in New York, so it's it's a hot spot, right? And all of them, they got tested positive. It's real.
Man, how are they doing right now?
They're much better now. Thank you for asking. Good. And, my sister, she didn't really struggle too much with it. But, my parents are older, they're in their 70s. And they were like out of it for like 2 full weeks. I mean, it is not just the flu. It is a little bit more than that. And my sister, she's the only one there in the house. She lives in the house with them. So, she's trying to take care of both of them. But, when I talked to my mom, she literally described it as, it's like you got hit by a truck. Like, she was like, everything hurts. You don't want to move. They didn't eat for days. Like, they were just out of it. And, now they're finally getting back to, the normal swing of things. Not 100%, but much better than they were a couple of weeks ago. So thankful for that.
That is a blessing.
Yeah.
Did you, by chance, see Revolt had a 2-hour kind of virtual town hall just about kind of the state of COVID and how it's affecting Black America?
No, I didn't see it. I think you mentioned it to me before, but I didn't actually catch it. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So if there's like a playback available somewhere, I'll go check for that.
Oh yeah, it's all on YouTube, and I keep seeing more and more people talking about it. It's just
Really?
kind of interesting. Like he had a lot of different people on. Like Big Sean actually came and spoke, and he mentioned like in Detroit, there's a hospital where they had a lot of people come in with coronavirus, and like within a month, 700 of the people working there caught the coronavirus.
What?
And it's just intense. It's like interesting what's it's interesting like how long this will, like the ripple effect after going down into it.
Yeah, it's really tricky, man. I think this thing is it's like it's super contagious. I mean, it just spreads like wildfire, and I think that part of it is because a lot of people who are maybe younger or just don't have as many symptoms or just don't notice symptoms, or some people really have no symptoms, but they're out there spreading it, and they don't know. You know, I mean, it's hard to like fault them really because they don't know, but hopefully if you stick to the guidelines, we can keep that kind of spreading to a minimum.
True, yeah. I know a lot more people are taking it more seriously now, so we just hope that people continue to do so, cancel the spring break plans, stay home. I'm trying to have a summer, man.
Exactly. We want some kind of summer, so just stay home right now.
Stay home. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to kind of sit down and talk with me today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Walter.
Thank you for listening to BossLocks, where we redefine professionalism and prove that natural hair and professionalism do coexist. If you liked today's episode, please go and subscribe to our show to make sure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you listen to podcasts. Matter of fact, if you don't see us on your favorite podcast platform, just let me know and I'll make sure we're there by the next time our episode comes out. And if you want to learn more about Patricia, please visit our website to find links to her social media, her website, and the ebook she mentioned. You can find it on www.bosslocks.org. That is BossLocks.org. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.